Hello everyone. I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know many of you use this video to fall asleep. So, before you get cozy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Story 1. The footage lasted exactly 43 seconds. That was the detail Detective Ayan Malik couldn't stop thinking about. Not the screaming. Not the blood. Not even the girl. Just the length. Because according to the building logs, the elevator never moved. The night everything started. At 2:13 a.m., police received a panic call from a luxury apartment tower in Karachi. Caller unknown. Female. Breathing hard. Barely understandable. The dispatcher replayed the recording 6 times later that morning. Only one sentence came through clearly. She's inside the elevator with me. Then the line disconnected. Arrival at Tower 9. By the time Detective Ayan arrived, the building lobby was already crowded. Residents whispering. Security guards nervous. Management trying too hard to stay calm. Tower 9 was expensive. Clean. Modern. The kind of place where people believe terrible things happen somewhere else. Until that night. Ayan stepped toward the security desk. What floor? The guard swallowed. There isn't one. Ayan stared at him. What? The elevator never stopped anywhere. The CCTV footage. The security team showed him the recording. One elevator camera. Timestamp active. No signs of editing. The footage began normally. A young woman entered the elevator alone. Early 20s. Black hoodie. Holding groceries. She pressed the button for floor 11. Doors closed. Normal. Then, at second 14, she looked up suddenly, like she realized someone else was there. But the elevator was empty. Ayan leaned closer to the monitor. The woman stepped backward slowly, eyes fixed on the corner of the elevator. Then she whispered something. Security enhanced the audio 3 times before they understood it. You got in after the doors closed. The impossible frame. Ayan replayed the footage again. Frame by frame. At second 18. The lights inside the elevator dimmed slightly. At second 19. The woman pressed herself against the wall. Terrified. At second 20. Something appeared behind her. Not clearly. Not fully. Just a shape. Tall. Still. Human-sized. And then, the footage distorted. The missing 11 seconds. Seconds 21 through 32 were corrupted. Not blacked out. Not deleted. Warped. Like the camera couldn't process what it was recording. The image twisted unnaturally. Sound stretched. Movement blurred. Then at second 33, the footage returned. The girl was gone. The elevator was empty. And the doors were still closed. The first problem. Ayan immediately checked the elevator movement logs. No movement recorded. No floor changes. No emergency stop. The elevator never left the lobby. But when security opened it, the girl was missing. The blood. There was only one thing inside. Blood. Not much. Just enough to notice. A thin smear near the corner where she had been standing. Forensics confirmed it belonged to the missing woman. Nadia Sheikh. Age 23. Graduate student. No criminal history. No known enemies. No body. The witness. Then a janitor came forward. Terrified. Refusing eye contact. I saw someone leave the elevator, he whispered. Ayan looked up immediately. The girl. The janitor shook his head. No. A long silence followed. Then, it wasn't walking right. The elevator opens again. At 3:41 a.m., while officers were still examining the scene. The elevator doors opened by themselves. Everyone turned. Empty. But the floor inside the elevator was wet. Not with blood. With water. Ayan stepped closer carefully, and noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Bare footprints. Leading out of the elevator. Only halfway. Because after 3 steps, they stopped. As if whoever made them simply ceased to exist. Ayan stood alone in front of the elevator later that morning. The building quiet now. Almost normal again. He replayed the footage one last time on his phone. Second 19. The shape appears. This time, he noticed something new. The reflection in the elevator mirror. The girl had one reflection, but the shape behind her had none. And just before the footage distorted, Nadia looked directly into the mirror and whispered 5 words that no one noticed before. That isn't the same elevator. Some people disappear without leaving a trace, but the worst cases are the ones where reality itself seems to disappear with them. Detective Ayan Malik hated elevators after that night. Not because of fear, because of uncertainty. Elevators obeyed systems. Buttons, floors, weight, direction. But Tower 9's elevator had done something impossible. It had gone nowhere, and still brought something back. The missing floor. At 8:12 a.m., Ayan requested the building blueprints. He spread them across the security office table. Every floor labeled clearly. Lobby, parking, 1 through 22. Roof access, normal. Until he noticed the numbering gap. Floor 14 didn't exist. He looked up slowly. Why is there no 14th floor? The building manager answered too quickly. Superstition. Ayan kept staring at the plans. Because that wasn't entirely true. Buildings sometimes skipped the number 13. Not 14. And stranger still, between floor 13 and floor 15, the architectural spacing was wrong. There was enough physical space for another level. A hidden one. The elevator technician. Ayan brought in the elevator maintenance contractor by noon. A nervous man named Tariq. 20 years in the industry. Ayan showed him the footage. Tariq stopped breathing for a moment. That's not possible, he whispered. Which part? Ayan asked. Tariq pointed at the control panel inside the elevator. At second 17, right before Nadia became terrified, an extra button appeared. A button that wasn't there before. No label. No number. Just a dark circular button beneath floor 22. Frame by frame analysis. Ayan replayed it slowly. Second 16. Nothing unusual. Second 17. The button exists. Second 18. Nadia notices it. Second 19. She looks behind her. Second 20. The shape appears. Then distortion. The technician's confession. Tariq looked pale now. Sweating. There were complaints before, he admitted quietly. Ayan's eyes narrowed. What kind of complaints? A long pause. People pressing the wrong floor. Another pause. And ending up somewhere else. The official records. Ayan demanded incident reports. Management resisted at first, then reluctantly complied. There were 6 previous complaints over 3 years. All strangely similar. Elevator stopping between floors, passengers hearing voices, doors opening onto dark hallways that didn't match the building, missing time. One resident claimed she lost 2 hours inside the elevator during a 15-second ride. Another said the mirror showed a different person standing behind him. None of the reports were made public. The security guard's story. One of the older guards finally admitted something else. There used to be a floor there. Silence filled the room. Ayan looked at him carefully. What do you mean? The guard swallowed hard. During construction. Before the building opened. A pause. Then something happened. The construction incident. Back in 2018, Tower 9 was nearly complete when an accident occurred during construction. Officially, gas leak. Small fire. Structural damage contained. Unofficially, 3 workers disappeared. Not died. Not recovered. Disappeared. Inside the unfinished 14th floor. The problem with the records. Ayan checked the archives himself. The construction blueprints originally included a 14th floor. After the incident, every document was revised. The floor was removed from all official records, as if it had never existed. The elevator test. At 11:47 p.m. that night, Ayan entered the elevator alone. Camera attached to his chest. Radioactive. Gun holstered. He pressed floor 11. Same as Nadia. Doors closed. Nothing happened at first. Smooth ascent. Normal movement. Then, the lights flickered. The elevator stopped suddenly. No floor indicator active. No movement. And then, a soft ding. Ayan looked down slowly. A new button had appeared beneath floor 22. Unlabeled. DAC. Waiting. The first decision. His radio crackled immediately. Ayan, status. He didn't answer, because the elevator doors were opening. Not onto floor 11. Onto darkness. Not blackness. A hallway. Dimly lit. Silent. Wrong. The hallway that shouldn't exist. Ion stepped forward carefully, gun drawn now. The hallway outside matched Tower 9's architecture, but older, unfinished. Concrete walls exposed, emergency lights flickering weakly. And at the far end, someone was standing there, still, watching him. Ion raised the flashlight. The figure didn't move, but as the light reached its face, Ion felt his stomach drop, because he recognized her immediately. Nadia Sheikh, still wearing the black hoodie from the footage, still holding the grocery bag, and looking directly at him. Ion took one careful step forward. Nadia. She didn't respond, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then slowly, very slowly, she raised one hand, not waving, not pointing, warning him. Behind her, in the darkness of the unfinished hallway, something moved, tall, thin, and walking toward them both. Some floors are removed from blueprints for safety, and some are removed because something inside them never left. Ion's first instinct was to run, not toward Nadia, away from whatever was moving behind her, but the elevator doors had already closed. Silently, without a sound, he was trapped on the unfinished floor, the floor that officially did not exist. Nadia doesn't move. She stood perfectly still at the end of the hallway. Black hoodie, plastic grocery bag hanging from one hand. Not trembling, not crying, just watching him. Ion, she whispered softly. His pulse stopped for a second. He never told her his name. The thing behind her, the movement in the darkness continued. Slow, uneven, not footsteps exactly, more like something learning how to walk properly. Ion raised the flashlight again. The beam reached deeper this time. Concrete, exposed wiring, burn marks on the walls, and for a split second, a face, then gone. The radio fails. Ion, respond. Static exploded through the earpiece. Then distortion. Then silence. The signal was gone. Nadia finally speaks. You shouldn't stay here too long, she said quietly. Ion kept the flashlight steady. How are you alive? She tilted her head slightly. That question seemed to confuse her. I came back. A pause. But not all of me. The construction fire. Ion moved carefully down the hallway. Every instinct screamed against it. The unfinished floor smelled wrong. Not rut. Not smoke. Wet concrete. Burned metal. Old electricity. Like the memory of a disaster that never fully ended. The wall of names. Halfway down the corridor, Ion found something written on the wall. Names. Dozens of them. Scratched into the concrete. Residents. Workers. Visitors. And beside some of the names, one word repeated again and again. Returned. The missing workers. Ion scanned lower. Then froze. 3 names circled together. Junaid Aslam Farouk Kodibalal Mayman. The construction workers who disappeared in 2018. And beneath their names, did not return correctly. The first survivor. A detective came before you. Ion turned sharply toward Nadia. What detective? She looked down the hallway. Not at him. Years ago. A pause. He found the floor too. What happened to him? Silence. Then, he came back upstairs. Another pause. But he wasn't alone anymore. The elevator ding. Suddenly, a distant elevator bell echoed through the unfinished level. Soft. Metallic. Someone else had arrived. Or something had. The hallway changes. The lights flickered violently now. For a second, the unfinished corridor became something else. Clean walls. Finished flooring. Warm lighting. An occupied residential hallway. People walking. Doors opening. Voices. Then, it snapped back to concrete and darkness. Ion stepped backward instinctively. What was that? Nadia answered softly. The version where the fire never happened. The real horror. Ion finally understood. This floor wasn't abandoned. It was unfinished in multiple realities at once. In one version, the construction accident happened. In another, it didn't. And somehow, both versions continued existing here. The people who returned. Nadia looked at him again, her expression almost pleading now. When people disappear here, she whispered. Sometimes they come back from the wrong version. Ion's grip tightened around the flashlight. What does that mean? Nadia looked behind him slowly. It means they remember things that never happened. The figure appears fully. A shadow stepped into the emergency light. Tall, male, burned across half the face, but alive, moving, breathing. The construction uniform was melted into the skin. Name tag still visible. Farouk, one of the missing workers. His movements were jerky, delayed, like his body and reality were slightly out of sync. The impossible statement. Farouk looked directly at Ion and spoke in a broken voice. The fire is still happening. The hallway lights began flickering faster, each flicker showing a different version of the floor. Burned, finished, empty, occupied, destroyed, untouched. And standing inside every version were people, some alive, some burned, some staring directly at Ion, as if they all knew he wasn't supposed to be there. The worst disappearances aren't the ones where people vanish. They're the ones where something else comes back wearing their face. Farouk took another step forward. The movement was wrong, not unnatural, just delayed, like his body received reality half a second after everyone else. Ion raised the flashlight higher. The burned worker's face shifted in and out of clarity as the emergency lights flickered. Half his skin looked charred. The other half looked untouched. Two outcomes existing on the same face. The smell returns. Then Ion noticed it. Smoke. Not fresh smoke. Not active fire. Old smoke. Wet smoke. The kind that clings to walls years after flames die. Except here. The flames might never have fully stopped. Farouk speaks again. The alarm never went off, Farouk whispered. His voice cracked unnaturally between sentences, like audio cutting between recordings. They told us to keep working. A pause, even after the heat started. Ion stepped carefully backward. What happened on this floor? Farouk stared at him with unfocused eyes. And behind him, the hallway changed again. The overlapping fire. For one flickering instant, Ion saw it. Workers running. Sparks exploding from unfinished wiring. Plastic sheeting melting from the ceiling. And flames. Everywhere. Then the image vanished. The hallway became dark concrete again. But the heat remained. Nadia's warning. You shouldn't look too long, Nadia whispered. Ion turned toward her. Why? Her eyes looked exhausted now. Because the floor starts choosing where you belong. The elevator doesn't exist anymore. Ion looked back toward where the elevator doors should have been. Nothing. Just hallway. No exit. No doors. No sign he had ever entered from anywhere. His heartbeat slowed. Not panic. Realization. The floor wasn't trapping people physically. It was absorbing them into unresolved versions of events. The fire replays again. Farouk suddenly grabbed his own throat. Not violently. Desperately. And Ion heard it. A faint alarm. Then screaming. Then silence. The hallway flickered again. And now the fire was fully visible. Workers running past him. Some screaming for help. Some frozen in place. One man pounding on an elevator door that never opened. And in the center of it all, someone standing still, watching the flames spread. The supervisor. Ion narrowed his eyes. The man wasn't trying to escape. He wore a white construction helmet. Supervisor badge. And he was holding something. A key card. The missing truth. Farouk pointed weakly toward the burning figure. He locked the floor. Ion looked at him sharply. What? Farouk's burned lips trembled. He sealed the elevators. A pause. To stop the fire from spreading. Another pause. While we were still here. The official story was false. The construction accident had never been accidental. It had been containment. Someone trapped workers on the unfinished floor during the fire. Then erased the level from official records afterward. The hallway becomes stable. For the first time, the flickering stopped. The unfinished floor settled into one version. The burning version. Heat flooded the corridor. Smoke crawled across the ceiling. Emergency lights flashed red. And suddenly, Ion realized something horrifying. This wasn't memory anymore. This was the moment itself. Still occurring. Still unfinished. The victims remain inside it. Workers appeared around him now. Not ghosts. not hallucinations. Versions of people trapped in the repeating event. Some running, some coughing, some banging on invisible doors. And none of them seemed aware of Ayan. Except Nadia. And Farooq. Because they had returned. The difference between them. Ayan looked at Nadia carefully. You escaped. She shook her head slowly. No. A pause. Part of me did. The critical realization. People who disappeared on this floor weren't simply dying. They were splitting across unresolved outcomes. One version trapped in the fire. Another escaping. Another never existing again properly. And occasionally, one of those versions returned upstairs. Wrong. The man in the white helmet notices him. At the far end of the burning corridor, the supervisor turned slowly and looked directly at Ayan. Unlike the others, he saw him clearly, then smiled. The first direct threat. The man raised the keycard slightly and said calmly, "You should have stayed in the elevator." The hallway lights exploded into violent flickering. For a split second, Ayan saw every version of the floor at once. Burning. Empty, finished, flooded, destroyed, occupied. And in every version, the man in the white helmet was still standing there, watching him, smiling, as if he had been waiting years for someone to come back down. Final line. Some fires don't end when the flames die. They continue burning inside every version of the people who never escaped them. The man in the white helmet didn't burn. That was the first impossible thing Ayan noticed. Flames moved around him, across the walls, along the ceiling, but never touched him. Like the fire itself recognized him. The supervisor steps forward. His boots echoed softly against the unfinished concrete. Slow, measured, calm. Everything else on the floor was chaos. Workers screaming, metal collapsing, smoke flooding the corridor. But he moved through it untouched. His badge swung slightly from his chest. Dust-covered, burned at the edges. The name was barely readable. Cameron Saeed. Site supervisor. Farooq reacts. Farooq staggered backward immediately. Fear flooded his damaged face. No, he whispered. Nadia lowered her head, like she already knew what would happen next. Ayan raises his weapon. Don't move, Ayan ordered. Cameron smiled slightly. Not mocking, not nervous, just tired. Then he said something strange. You still think this is happening in order? The hallway distorts again. The burning corridor flickered violently. For 1 second, Cameron appeared burned alive. Skin melted, eyes destroyed. Next second, perfectly untouched again. Then older, then younger, then standing in a completely different part of the hallway. Reality around him refused to stabilize. The truth about the fire. Ayan stepped forward carefully. You trapped them here. Cameron's smile faded. I contained it. You locked workers inside. Cameron looked around at the burning hallway, at the people endlessly reliving their final moments, then answered quietly. You don't understand what started that night. The first hint. The floor trembled slightly. Not structurally, conceptually, like the memory itself reacted to his words. Cameron noticed it too. His voice lowered. The fire wasn't the problem. A pause. The fire was the solution. The workers begin appearing. More figures emerged through the smoke now. Burned workers, construction staff, residents who vanished later, all walking the unfinished hallway in different states of awareness. Some repeating loops, some staring blankly, some whispering to themselves, and all of them avoided looking at Cameron. Nadia explains. He kept the doors closed, Nadia whispered. Ayan glanced at her. Why? Her expression tightened. Because something came up from below. Below. Ayan frowned immediately. Below what? Nadia slowly pointed downward. Beneath the unfinished floor. Below the building foundation itself. The real construction accident. Cameron laughed once. Short. Broken. You think we built Tower 9 first? A pause. There was already something here. The original structure. The corridor flickered again. And suddenly Ayan saw another version of the site. Older. Much older. Not luxury apartments. Not modern concrete. An underground structure. Narrow hallways. Rusting doors. Industrial walls. Something abandoned long before Tower 9 existed. The discovery. Cameron looked directly at Ion now. We found it during excavation. The hallway lights dimmed. A sealed level beneath the city. Another pause. No records. No blueprints. Farouk began shaking violently beside them. Don't tell him, he whispered. Please don't tell him. The workers heard something. Cameron ignored him. At first we thought it was an old bunker. But workers started hearing things. Voices inside walls. Elevators moving with no power. Doors opening underground. The flames around the hallway intensified slightly. And then, Cameron said softly, people started returning from places they never entered. The first disappearance. Ion's voice hardened. What was under the building? Cameron looked at him silently for several seconds. Then answered, a place where reality doesn't stay consistent. The elevator was connected. Everything clicked together in Ion's mind. The hidden floor. The disappearances. The overlapping versions. The impossible elevator rides. Tower 9 hadn't created the problem. It had been built on top of it. Why Cameron locked the elevators? I sealed the floor to stop it spreading, Cameron said quietly. You left them to burn. Cameron's face twitched slightly. First sign of guilt. No, he whispered. A pause. I left versions of them to burn. The horrifying explanation. Cameron stepped closer. When the fire started, he said, people began splitting. Ion's stomach tightened. Different outcomes. Different versions. Some escaped. Some didn't. Another pause. And the building stopped knowing which ones were real. The critical decision. So you trapped the floor. Cameron nodded slowly. To force reality to choose. Silence. But it never did. The unfinished hallway suddenly shook violently. Not from collapse. Not from explosion. From movement beneath it. Far below the burning floor. Something heavy shifted. The lights flickered. And for the first time, Ion heard it clearly. An elevator arriving somewhere underneath them. Deep underground. Far below Tower 9. Where no floor should exist. Some buildings are haunted by what died inside them. And some are haunted by what was already waiting underneath before construction even began. The sound came again. Ding. Soft. Metallic. Far below them. Not echoing upward. Not distorted by distance. Perfectly clear. Like the elevator underneath the building was directly beneath Ion's feet. Everything stops. The burning hallway froze. Workers stopped moving mid-run. Smoke stopped curling through the air. Even the flames seemed suspended between moments. Only Cameron remained still. Watching. Listening. And terrified. Cameron finally breaks. No. He whispered. For the first time since Ion arrived. The supervisor looked afraid. Not guilty. Not defensive. Afraid. The elevator was never part of the building. Ion stepped closer. What is that? Cameron stared downward. It wasn't built by us. The floor beneath them vibrated slightly. Another ding. Closer this time. The hidden shaft. The concrete at the center of the corridor cracked suddenly. Not violently. Silently. A thin line spread across the floor. Then widened. And beneath it, Ion saw metal. Old metal. Rust-covered. Circular. An elevator door. Buried underneath the unfinished floor. The original structure returns. The hallway flickered again. But this time, the unfinished construction site vanished completely. Now Ion stood inside the older structure beneath Tower 9. Industrial walls. Ancient wiring. Heavy steel doors. And symbols carved into the walls that looked more like warnings than language. The first expedition. Cameron spoke quietly now. Like confessing. When we found this place. He said. The city ordered us to seal it. Ion frowned. The city knew. Cameron nodded once. There were old records. Another pause. Disappearances dating back 50 years. The elevator that moved without power. Workers discovered the underground elevator during excavation. No electrical connection. No machinery. No visible support system. And yet, it moved. On its own. Always at night. The impossible passenger logs. Cameron looked exhausted now. At first it was just sounds. Doors opening underground. Movement below us. Then people began reporting something worse. The elevator would arrive already occupied by people who had vanished years earlier. The returned. Nadia stepped backward slowly as Cameron continued. They always looked normal at first, he whispered, but they remembered the wrong lives. Ayan turned sharply toward her. Nadia lowered her gaze immediately. The truth about Nadia. You didn't survive, Ayan said quietly. Nadia's eyes filled with something close to grief. No. The answer came instantly. I returned. The difference. Ayan finally understood. People weren't escaping the underground structure. Versions of them were. Copies pulled from alternate outcomes. Some incomplete. Some altered. Some carrying memories from realities that never happened. The elevator arrives. The buried doors beneath the cracked floor shuddered. Then slowly, they opened. Darkness inside. Not blackness. Depth. Ayan aimed the flashlight downward. The beam disappeared almost immediately. No visible bottom. No elevator cabin. Just an endless shaft descending into impossible distance. Something comes up. Then, movement. Far below. Slow. Deliberate. Ascending. Cameron's final warning. We never should have dug here, Cameron whispered. The returning workers around them began panicking now. Some ran. Some screamed. Some repeated the same final moments of their deaths. Because they recognized the sound. They had heard it before the fire started. The real cause of the fire. Ayan looked at Cameron sharply. The fire wasn't an accident. Cameron shook his head slowly. No. Another ding. Louder now. We started the fire ourselves. Containment. The workers had tried to seal the underground level after the elevator began bringing things back. But the structure beneath Tower 9 reacted. Doors opened by themselves. Hallways changed. Workers disappeared and returned altered. And finally, someone activated the fire suppression failure manually. To collapse the unfinished floor. To bury the elevator again. But it never stayed buried. The shaft beneath them continued opening wider now. Metal screaming softly as ancient doors separated further. Cold air rushed upward. And with it, voices. Hundreds of them. Whispering simultaneously. Not screaming. Not crying. Talking. Like passengers inside a crowded elevator descending forever. The first passenger appears. A hand emerged slowly from the darkness below. Human. Burned. Wrong. Then another. Then a face. Ayan's stomach dropped instantly. Because the face climbing upward was his own. The thing wearing Ayan's face pulled itself halfway out of the underground shaft. Its eyes were slightly misaligned. Its movements delayed. Like it had learned human behavior from memory instead of experience. Then it smiled. And spoke in Ayan's voice. You finally came back. The most terrifying discoveries beneath a city aren't ancient tunnels or buried bodies. They are the places where reality itself has been transporting the wrong versions of people for decades. The thing wearing Ayan's face climbed fully out of the shaft. Every movement was almost correct. Almost human. Almost synchronized. But not completely. Its smile arrived half a second too late. Its blinking happened unevenly. And when it breathed, the sound came before the chest movement. Like reality was struggling to keep it aligned. The returned detective. Ayan raised his weapon instantly. Don't move. The copy tilted its head slightly. Curious. Not threatened. Then it looked around the burning unfinished floor. As if recognizing a place it remembered differently. This version is still unstable, it whispered. Cameron steps back. Even Cameron looked horrified now. No. He whispered again. That one never came up before. The rule breaks. Ayan kept his aim steady. What is it? Cameron answered without taking his eyes off the copy. Usually the elevator returns people who disappeared. A pause. But you never disappeared. The implication. The shaft beneath them groaned softly. More movement below. More voices. And suddenly Ayan understood something catastrophic. The underground elevator wasn't limited to returning lost people anymore. It had started generating possible versions of people who still existed. The copy speaks again. The other Ayan smiled faintly. You think you're the original? Ayan's jaw tightened. What are you? The copy looked almost confused by the question. Surviving outcome. Nadia reacts. Nadia stepped backward immediately. Fear flooded her expression. That's not good, she whispered. Ion glanced toward her. What do you mean? She stared at the copy of Ion. It's stable. The difference between copies. Most returned people were fragmented, delayed, incomplete. They glitched between memories and identities. But this version of Ion was coherent, which meant the underground structure was learning. The elevator learns identity. The copy slowly approached the edge of the shaft, looking upward toward the unfinished hallway, toward the world above. Then it said softly, "You always believed there should only be one version." Another pause. That limitation is artificial. The workers start reacting. The trapped workers surrounding the hallway became agitated. Some screamed. Some covered their ears. Some began repeating the same sentence over and over. Don't let them upstairs. The original purpose. Cameron finally broke completely. We were never trying to bury the elevator, he admitted. Ion looked sharply at him. We were trying to stop the copies from reaching the city. The first escape. The copy of Ion looked at Cameron, smiled again. You failed. Then suddenly, the hallway around them flickered violently. For one horrifying second, Ion saw the city above. Not normal, not destroyed, overlapping, multiple versions of streets, buildings misaligned, people duplicated faintly in motion, reality destabilized on a massive scale. Then the vision vanished. The elevator expands. The shaft beneath them widened further. And now, more faces were visible below. Hundreds, thousands maybe, different ages, different clothing, different time periods, all ascending slowly together, like passengers waiting their turn to arrive. The realization. Ion's voice lowered. This thing has been running for decades. Cameron shook his head weakly. Longer. Before the city. The original underground structure beneath Tower 9 predated the district itself. Possibly the city. No records explained who built it, or why, but the elevator had one consistent behavior. It transported unresolved versions of people between realities. And sometimes, it sent them back wrong. The copy comes closer. The other Ion stopped only a few feet away now. Close enough for details. Tiny differences. A scar Ion never had. Different eye color beneath the light. A wedding ring on one hand. Memories from another life. Another outcome. The most disturbing question. The copy looked directly into Ion's eyes, and asked quietly, "How certain are you that you're the version that belongs here?" Silence filled the unfinished floor, because nobody there could answer that anymore. The underground elevator dinged again. This time not below them. Above. Somewhere inside Tower 9. The copy smiled slowly. They're already arriving upstairs. Then the emergency lights went dark. And in the final second before total blackness, Ion saw dozens of silhouettes climbing out of the shaft behind him, all wearing familiar faces. The dead are frightening because they return from the past. But the truly terrifying things are the versions of people that return from realities where they never should have existed at all. The blackout lasted only 4 seconds. But when the lights returned, the unfinished floor was no longer the same. Some workers were gone. Others had doubled. And the copy of Ion had disappeared. The elevator above. Another ding echoed faintly through the structure. Not below them this time. Above. Inside Tower 9. Ion turned instantly toward the hallway leading back to the elevator shaft. "We have to get upstairs." Cameron grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt. "If they've reached the city." He whispered, "You're already too late." The return ride. The elevator doors finally reappeared at the end of the corridor. Old steel. Burned at the edges. But now the panel looked wrong. No floor numbers. No controls. Only one illuminated symbol. Up. The elevator ride feels alive. The doors closed behind them. Ion. Nadia. Cameron. And silence. No movement at first. Then, the elevator began ascending. Far too fast. The walls vibrated softly. And behind them, voices whispered inside the metal. Not random whispers. Conversations. Arguments. Entire lives happening inside the walls. The copy speaks through the speakers. Without warning, Ion's own voice filled the elevator cabin. "You still think replacement is destruction?" The detective froze. The voice continued calmly. "But the city won't disappear." A pause. It will simply become populated by better aligned versions. The doors open. The elevator stopped abruptly. Ding! The doors slid open onto the lobby of Tower 9. At first glance, everything looked normal. Residents walking. Security guards talking. Phones ringing. But then Ion noticed it. Nobody moved completely correctly. The replacements. A woman crossing the lobby blinked too slowly. A man at the desk repeated the same motion twice with slight variation. 2 residents exited through the same doorway, then briefly overlapped before separating again. And worst of all, nobody noticed. The security guard. The same guard from earlier approached Ion, smiling politely. "Everything all right, detective?" His voice was correct. His face was correct. But his eyes were different, slightly mismatched in timing. Like 2 versions of expression trying to synchronize. Nadia recognizes him. Nadia stepped backward immediately. "That's not him," she whispered. The guard slowly turned toward her. Still smiling. She remembers too much. The first public replacement. The guard's face twitched subtly. For a split second, Ion saw another version of him beneath the surface. Older, injured, wearing different clothes. Then it corrected itself instantly. The city has already changed. Ion rushed outside Tower 9. Traffic moved normally. People filled the sidewalks. The city looked alive. But everywhere, tiny inconsistencies. A child holding a balloon suddenly switched hands mid-step. A street vendor repeated the same sentence twice in different tones. A bus briefly displayed 2 destination signs simultaneously. The city was functioning, but synchronization was failing. The phone call. Ion's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Silence. Then his own voice spoke from the other end. "There are more of us now." The line disconnected. Cameron understands the truth. Cameron looked completely broken. "We thought the elevator only copied people who entered it," he whispered. Ion looked at him sharply. "And now?" Cameron stared at the crowded street. "Now it's using observation itself. How replacement works." The underground structure had evolved. At first, it needed direct contact. People physically disappearing. Returning altered. Now, it only needed recognition. Awareness. Memory. Once someone perceived an alternate version, the boundary weakened, and the city began accepting coexistence. The first mass event. A scream erupted across the street. Everyone turned. A woman stood frozen beside a taxi, terrified, because standing next to her was another version of herself. Same face, different clothing, different age, both staring at each other in horror. Then, both versions smiled simultaneously and walked away together. The city accepts the impossible. Nobody else reacted. Pedestrians continued moving. Cars continued driving. Reality was adapting faster than human fear. Ion sees himself again. In the reflection of a nearby shop window, Ion caught movement behind him. His copy standing there silently, watching. When Ion turned, nothing was there. But in the reflection, the other version remained, smiling faintly. The city lights flickered together across several blocks. Not power failure, synchronization failure. For one brief moment, Karachi appeared doubled. 2 overlapping versions of the same city occupying the same space. Then the image stabilized again. But not perfectly. Never perfectly. A city doesn't collapse the moment reality breaks. First, it learns how to continue functioning with the wrong people inside it. The first confirmed disappearance happened at 3:12 p.m. Broad daylight. Crowded street. Dozens of witnesses. And somehow, almost nobody remembered it correctly afterward. The woman at the crosswalk. Traffic cameras showed a woman waiting at a pedestrian crossing near Shah-e Faisal. Normal. Unremarkable. Then another woman approached her. Same height. Same face. Same voice. Different clothes. Different hairstyle. The 2 versions stared at each other for exactly 4 seconds. Then the footage distorted. When it stabilized, only one woman remained. No violence. No struggle. No sound. Just subtraction. Witness statements don't match. Police interviews became impossible. Some witnesses claimed the woman in red disappeared. Others insisted it was the woman in black. A few swore there had only ever been one person. Reality itself no longer agreed on events. Ayun watches the city unravel. By evening, reports flooded every station in Karachi. People seeing duplicates, family members behaving differently, neighbors remembering conflicting histories. One man insisted his brother had died 10 years ago. The brother insisted he had never even been sick. Both memories carried evidence. Photos, documents, records, and somehow, both histories existed simultaneously. The replacement pattern. Ayun finally noticed the system behind it. The copies weren't random. They replaced people whose lives contained unresolved possibilities. Regrets, missed outcomes, alternate paths. The underground elevator wasn't choosing at random. It was selecting instability. Nadia starts fading. Inside the temporary police command center, Nadia sat silently near the wall, looking weaker every hour. Ayun approached carefully. "You okay?" She looked up slowly. "I don't think I belong in this version anymore." Her voice sounded distant now, like it came from another room. "The returned cannot stay stable," Cameron explained quietly. "The copies survive best when reality accepts them." Ayun frowned. "And Nadia?" Cameron lowered his gaze. "She remembers too clearly." Memory becomes dangerous. People who remembered the original world accurately began destabilizing, not dying, not vanishing, breaking synchronization, because the city was slowly settling into a new consistent state, one where contradictions were normal. The news broadcast. Every channel in the city interrupted programming that night. Emergency anchors trying desperately to remain calm. But even the broadcasts glitched strangely. Different versions of the same anchor appeared between frames. Sentences changed halfway through speaking. Backgrounds shifted subtly. Then one anchor suddenly stopped reading the teleprompter, looked directly into the camera, and whispered, "Some of us were already replaced years ago." The broadcast cut immediately. The copy contacts Ayun again. At 11:09 p.m., Ayun received another call from his own number. This time he answered without hesitation. The other version of him sounded calm, almost sympathetic. "You still think originals matter?" Ayun walked away from the others. "What do you want?" A soft laugh came through the speaker. "Correction." A pause. "Your world was never stable." The philosophy of replacement. The copy continued. "People regret. People imagine different lives. Different choices. Different endings." Another pause. "The elevator simply allows those versions to exist." The horrifying possibility. Ayun stopped walking, because part of him understood. What if reality had always been forcing only one outcome, while countless others remained suppressed? What if the underground structure beneath the city merely removed that limitation? The originals start vanishing faster. Midnight approached, and the disappearances accelerated. Not violently, not publicly, quietly. People simply failing to remain singular. Some merging with alternate selves. Some being replaced entirely. Some splitting into multiple conflicting versions. Nadia's final warning. Nadia grabbed Ayun's wrist suddenly. Her hand felt cold now. Unstable. "You have to destroy the elevator." Ayun looked at her carefully. "Can it be destroyed?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I don't think it's a machine." The real nature of the structure. Everything clicked into place. The underground elevator wasn't technology. Not fully. It was a point of transition. A place where realities crossed. Where unresolved human possibilities moved between worlds. And Tower 9 had accidentally built directly above it. The city at night. From the rooftop of police headquarters, Karachi no longer looked singular. Buildings overlapped faintly. Roads shifted subtly. Different versions of the skyline phased in and out. And among the millions of lights, Ayun realized something horrifying. Some apartments now contained people who had never existed in his version of reality before. Yet everyone around them accepted them completely. Ayun looked into the dark reflection of a rooftop window. His copy stood beside him in the glass. Not threatening, not smiling, just watching. Then the reflection version spoke softly. "You keep calling us replacements." A pause. "But what if you're the version that was never supposed to remain?" The reflection vanished. But Ayun's own face in the glass no longer looked entirely familiar afterward. The most terrifying part of losing reality isn't the appearance of monsters. It's the moment you can no longer prove that you were ever the original version of yourself to begin with. By the 7th day, people stopped reporting duplicates. Not because the phenomenon ended, because it became normal. That was how reality finally lost. Not through destruction, through adaptation. The new Karachi. The city still functioned. Traffic still moved. Markets still opened. Children still walked to school. But nothing remained singular anymore. Some streets changed layout depending on who walked through them. Certain buildings existed in slightly different forms at different times of day. Families remembered conflicting versions of their own histories, and somehow learned to live with all of them. Reality had stopped choosing one outcome. The government response. Officials called it perceptual synchronization disorder, a meaningless phrase, a desperate attempt to label the impossible. Public broadcasts encouraged citizens to avoid mirrors during synchronization events, ignore alternate memories, report duplicate sightings, calmly never enter elevators alone after midnight. But the warnings came too late, because the city had already stabilized into multiplicity. Ayun stopped searching for originals. At first, Detective Ayun Malik still tried to identify who was real, who belonged, who had been replaced. But the effort became impossible. Some copies possessed memories more complete than originals. Some originals remembered events that no longer existed. Some people had merged so thoroughly with alternate selves that separation no longer made sense. Eventually, even fingerprints stopped matching consistently. Nadia's last conversation. Nadia faded slowly over several days. Not dying, not disappearing, becoming less synchronized with the city around her. One night, she sat beside Ayun on the rooftop overlooking Karachi's fractured skyline. Lights flickered across overlapping versions of the city below. Different roads, different towers, different outcomes sharing the same night. Ayun looked at her quietly. What happens to you now? Nadia smiled faintly. Sad. Tired. I think my version stops being necessary. A long silence followed. Then she asked him something unexpected. Would you really want only one life? Ayun frowned slightly. One reality, she corrected softly. The elevator continues running. Despite everything, the underground elevator was never found again. Tower 9 was evacuated, then abandoned, then somehow reoccupied months later by residents who claimed it had never closed. Official records changed constantly. Some archives showed the building never existed. Others showed it had stood for 30 years. No version remained stable for long. But one fact persisted across every conflicting history. The elevator still moved at night. Cameron's disappearance. Cameron Saeed vanished 3 weeks later. No witnesses. No footage. No body. But in some versions of the city, people claimed he had died years earlier during the original fire. And in one police report, Ayun found a statement signed by Cameron himself dated 12 years in the future. It contained only one sentence. Do not let the elevator learn your regrets. Ayun encounters himself one final time. Late one evening, months after the first disappearance, Ayun entered an empty subway station beneath the city, and saw him, the other version, standing across the platform. Same face, same voice, different life. Neither looked surprised anymore. The final conversation. The copy spoke first. Are you still trying to determine which of us is original? Ayun thought for a long moment, then shook his head. No. The copy nodded slowly, almost relieved. Good. A train passed between them briefly, metal screaming through the tunnel. And when it cleared, the other Ayun was gone. Or perhaps, he had simply boarded a different version of reality. The last understanding. Ayun finally accepted what the city had become. Not broken, not haunted, not invaded, expanded. A place where unresolved possibilities no longer disappeared, where alternate lives coexisted instead of being erased. And somewhere beneath it all, the underground elevator continued moving endlessly between worlds, carrying passengers who sometimes returned, sometimes didn't, and sometimes came back as versions reality had never intended to keep. 1 year later, 2:13 a.m., a security camera inside a downtown elevator recorded something unusual. A young man entered alone. Pressed floor 8. Doors closed. Then, at second 17, a new button appeared beneath the others. DAC. Unlabeled. Waiting. The young man stared at it nervously. And somewhere deep beneath Karachi, an elevator answered with a soft metallic ding. Some cities are built over graves. But the most dangerous cities are built over places where reality itself never learned how to stop creating new versions of the people inside it.